believe it or not, it is still Black History Month. We're on the second to last day of February, and as promised, we wanted to have a special feature for this Black History Month. And we could think of nobody else to invite to be a part of the XY Spark family than our guest for tonight. Guys, I do not want you to go away. I want you to stay tuned. Tonight, we are going to have a party here on XY Spark. We hope that you have your popcorn. We hope that you have your chips. We hope that you're pumped. We hope that you had some good rest. We hope you're not sleepy. We are here tonight just to celebrate and to talk about mental health and healthy masculinity in Afro American men and minority populations. We are going to have a great time tonight. Guys, don't go away. Just before we introduce our guest, we're just going to go through our short intro and then we will be right back with you.
Grief and loss, trauma, mental health, alcohol and drug use, gender roles, anger management, self-esteem, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and the pressures of societal norms are real-life issues that affect men. Join Rolando, psychotherapist, author, life coach, and motivational speaker that has dedicated his profession to working with men to find a healthier alternative to cope and handle these stressors. Rolando believes that men are lacking in social, psychological, emotional, and spiritual support that is necessary for a lifestyle that promotes healthy masculinity. We invite you to join us on XY Spark, where we discuss issues that men face. At XY Spark, we believe the key for happier families is restoring healthy masculinity.
Thank you so much, guys. We are here. We're right back with you. And tonight, as we said earlier, we have a special guest in the form of Frederic Beaty. Frederic Beaty has decided to miss his beauty sleep tonight and come and be a part of our program. I just want to give you a brief intro about Frederic Beaty just before I bring him on. But, I'm going to let Frederic tell you the rest about himself. But one thing I know is Frederic is an amazing human being and he's passionate about what he does. Frederic, good evening. Welcome, buddy.
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?
Man, I'm excited, man. I'm excited. I tell you, I've been so excited about tonight that, man, we're glad you're here. Frederic, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
All right. So, the long and short of it is basically, first and foremost, I'm an author. I'm the author of 4 books, 2 that I've co-written and then 2 that I've actually written myself. I'm a podcaster. I have my own platform. Oh my God. Plus, I'm a writer. I write for a magazine, the Aspiring Authors magazine. I'm the editor in chief of their Facebook page, but I also contribute as a writer to the magazine. And the other thing that I want people to know about me that I'm a veteran. I served in the United States Navy for 3 years.
Wow.
And just really just my platform and what I do is just about helping people propel themselves forward in what they want to do or what they're currently doing.
Wow, thank you. Well, you see, here you go, because I thought I knew everything about Frederic, and now he's telling me he's a veteran, man. Hats off to you, buddy, for that. That's amazing, man. Frederic, I wanted to tell you, when I did my research and I recognized that you're also someone that's passionate about mental health. And, as a psychotherapist, I recognize that there are a lot of Afro-American men, Caribbean, African natured men who they really don't understand or believe that mental health is something that could impact them. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, Frederic, because I noticed that that's something that you tend to be passionate about as well.
Well, so for me, my journey into mental health really started. It started in 2015. And the reason I say 2015 because that's a significant year for me. 2015 was, well, I'll just put it like this. In 2015, I lost my oldest son to a police-involved shooting. It was probably one of the most difficult things I probably ever had to go through in life as itself. It really just tested me, not only emotionally but also mentally. I can't, to the point of like, so I'll say during those 5 years, doing from 2015 up to now, gosh, several mental breakdowns, um, two suicide attempts, one in 2018 and then another one um, in August of last year. Um, to finally being going to a counselor and being diagnosed with anxiety and PTSD. It's it's been a journey. It really has been a journey. And coming to really think about it, it also it also stemmed from a lot of the things that I endured as a younger man, as a younger black male. Um, being in a domestic being in a domestic violence situation, on both ends of the spectrum. That was something that, when I talked to my counselor, that was one of the things that had really put an effect upon me, because when I think about mental health, as far as you know us as African American males, um, it's something that we do not talk about. And the reason I think that is because of the shameful nature of disclosing something like that to and and you can probably agree with me this one on this, Rolando, that if we tell someone that's close to us that something's wrong with us, the response is basically going to be, man up, be a man, nothing's wrong with you, you know
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
suck it up, buttercup, you're okay. And this is the norm in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And the just now, even someone like you and other people that I've connected myself to, to make this a important thing.
Mm-hmm.
It means a lot for the gents. It means a lot for guys like me who
Mm-hmm.
has suffered, who have suffered silently for so long,
Wow.
and to never really get an understanding of what they were going through and what they were feeling and what they were experiencing
Mm-hmm.
up until up until now. For me, up until I talked to my counselor and was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety. I I never knew.
Mm-hmm.
I never understood what was wrong with me. I just figured that it was just I just thought it was the natural flow of things, the natural flow of my emotions, the natural flow of how I was hardwired as an individual, how I was hardwired as a as a black male. So I thought a lot of these things were the norm, and I thought that it was, for a long time, I thought it was very, very, I won't say bad, but for a long time I held a lot of the things that I felt in. I compartmentalized it. If someone hurt me, emotionally, I compartmentalized it. Um, for the better part of maybe of like, again, of 5 years, a lot of the emotions that I had when I lost my child were compartmentalized, because I felt I had to be strong for I had to be strong and not release any of those emotions, because someone would say, well, stop crying, stop feeling like you're down and despondent on yourself. You're not a man if you don't, if you if you if you let these emotions go. And that was one of the things I was afraid of someone telling me that I'm not a man,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or I don't know how to handle anything. And come to find out that, what I was feeling was natural the whole all along. It was just my 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 body and my mind's reaction to the stimuli that I was exposed to. You know,
Wow.
to understand too. And I never understood the stages of grief and
Mm-hmm.
of grief and loss until it was we talked about it. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
never I never understood those stages. I never understood, those up and down emotions, those days where you where you cry and you bargain with God and say, "Hey, look, why did you take him? Take me instead." Or those days where you just cry uncontrollably and there's no there's no explicable reason as to why. So I never understood that until I talked to a counselor, and then I just started researching it on my own.
Hmm. Wow, Frederick, man. Man, listen, love goes out to you, brother. Love goes
Thank you,
out to
sir.
you, and I'm saying that with every passion. And as I'm listening to your story, I can still hear those emotions that you're experiencing, and we want you to know that you know um based on the hat that I wear as a psychotherapist, I totally understand where you're coming from. And I'm so sorry to hear about what happened with your son there, man, because that could not have been easy. And just the maturity and the boldness that you have demonstrated here to be on XY Spark this evening and to be sharing your story as a black man, that's phenomenal. And we're hoping that those who are listening tonight, whether they are Afro American or not, they will hear how important it is for them to not hide away from those emotions, not try to compartmentalize those emotions. Because what you said there is so critical, Frederick. I
Mhm.
mean, two suicidal attempts. I mean, your story, if you allow me to say, your story, Fred, is an inspiration. It is an inspiration, and I thank you so much for that. So you came into that place where you decided, as a black man, that I'm going to step away from my cultural norms. Was that easy for you?
It was not because
What are
of
some of the
the
barriers that you came up against?
just the main one was just really the fight against of how I was brought up, how I was raised. A lot of
Mm,
those things were ingrained in my mind because I never really saw my dad show emotion.
mm,
I never really saw my uncles show emotion. I never really saw my grandfather show emotion when things were bothering them. I never I never saw that. I never witnessed that. I never experienced that.
mm,
So most of it was the hardest fight was against how I saw how I saw my father, my uncles, my grandfather, how I saw them react to serious or traumatic situations.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Kind of like I never saw the emotional part of it. And for me as a young child growing up, I just it was assumed that okay, just a tragic moment comes, you don't show anything.
mm,
You just be stone faced and you don't show anything. You push that all inside.
mm-hmm,
As I got older and as I was going through this thing we call life
mm,
and having these experiences of being a father
mm-hmm,
of of being a father being a brother being a son
mm-hmm,
being a son being all these things certain instances started to shift. I
mm-hmm,
started to see things a little differently. When my
mm-hmm,
when my oldest son was born, I was happy and beyond I was happy beyond belief. I went I when I literally cried as you know when he was born because
mm-hmm,
it was the happiest moment of my life.
mm-hmm.
subsequently, when my daughter and my other two sons were born, the experience was the same.
Mm-hmm.
But then,
Mm-hmm.
again, as I kept living through life, and I experienced these things, and I experienced these emotions and things that I was, going through.
Mm-hmm.
It was like they were. It was a con. It was that's when the conflict began.
Mm-hmm.
So so on one side, I have all these wonderful and extremely scary emotions that I have,
Mm-hmm.
and these emotions bring about either these wonderful or these scary experiences. And on the other side, I have this thing that I was already hardwired, that I was already taught and hardwired to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Do I do I stay on the side of how I was hardwired, and how I was raised, or do I come over to the side of where and have this and enjoy the experiences of my emotions, or do
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stay, and do I kind of walk that fence and pray and hope and pray I don't get knocked over to one side or the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, you know, I played defense, so I toed the line,
Mm-hmm.
and in some it and that came with varying levels of success and failure. Um, the successes were being able to embrace certain things, certain qualities about myself.
Mm-hmm.
The failures were, again, the depression, the despondency, the feeling of like maybe what I'm feeling, maybe what I'm doing, and maybe what I'm feeling is wrong, and the the constant questioning. If I'm a man, why do I feel these emotions? Why do I feel the way that I feel?
Mm-hmm.
And with those successes and failures, it was that constant struggle. And then even on top of that, it was always that one person, that whether it be male or female, always saying that real men don't show emotions. Real men just push things aside and they continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I found that to be a very contradictory and also conflicting statement,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because even in the relationships that I won't say endured, that I encountered and experienced,
Mm-hmm.
it was always, if I was feeling bad or feelings like I was out of place or out of touch, and I would try to explain this,
Mm-hmm.
it was met with, you ain't a man. You supposed to stand up and be strong. But
Mm.
what am I supposed to do about these feelings that I feel? What am I supposed to do about these emotions?
Hold a minute. You know something. Yeah, man, you said something there, Frederick. Man, I'm sorry to cut in there, man. But what you just said there is something that a lot of men are dealing with, not just in the Afro American community, but there is a belief that you should, if you're a man, you should not be displaying certain things. You shouldn't feel certain things. You shouldn't talk about certain feelings. And now I hear you're saying that you have been in relationships where that's the expectation. So it's as if um in some societies there is not any room for a man to be human. You should just be man but not human.
Man, oh my
So
goodness. Oh my goodness. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that, because, and not to cut you off or anything like that, but
yeah.
it's For someone to say, to make a statement like that is that's powerful in and of itself. Honestly
Mm-hmm.
speaking,
Mm-hmm.
for someone to say that you're supposed to be a man, you don't do it, you're not supposed to do it, you're not supposed to feel any of this. That's all. That's akin to saying that we're not human, and that's so far from that fact.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
are human,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
but again, as black men, as Afro American men, as Caribbean men, as or I'll just put this even more, even in a more wider scope, men. Period.
Yes.
We're told that if you bear your emotions, you're not a man.
Hmm.
Why? When I'm just as human as you are. If you cut me, I bleed. I'm gonna say, "Ouch! It hurts."
But as
If
a
you
man, you're not supposed to say ouch if it hurts, right?
right, right, and I think,
Wow.
and that's the thing, and I think that's the thing that a you know a lot of, and again, out and it's what I'm about to say is broad, but it's a but because it accounts for all men. But I'm gonna narrow it down as it pertains to us as men of color.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and I don't, and what I'm about to say, I don't want any of my sisters to be angry with me about what I'm about to say, because what I'm about to say is only from my own personal experience. But in some cases, but in some cases, not all cases. In some cases, it's categorically true.
Mm.
You when you and when women when black women go through their things, their emotional things.
Mm-hmm.
We black us as black men or whomever, we're there for that unilateral unequivocal support.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a bad day, hey, here's my shoulder, go ahead and cry on my shoulder, tell me all about it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the opposite,
Mm.
it's met with harshness. It's met with you a man, you a man, why you whine, why you whining, why you complaining. It's met with, in some kinds it's met with in some cases it's met with hostility. And
Oh wow.
but at the same time,
Wow.
where you're like you're as a woman, you're telling me that you had a bad day, and I'm responding in the loving, nurturing way that you're asking me to,
Hmm.
that you want me to, by saying, "Hey, here's my shoulder. You can cry on me. Come sit down. Come sit down, and let's have
Mm-hmm.
let's let's have a glass of wine and talk about it."
Mm-hmm.
But again, in the opposite, it's hostility, it's harshness, it's rejection, it's all the negative things that that's experienced. And if the listeners out there, if you can tell by the sound of my voice, it is a emotional pivot point for me, because that's the type of relationship that I was in for a while, for a while. You know,
Mm. Wow. S- Wow. You said something, and I like I recognize that you were saying it with, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and saying that what I hear you're saying is that some women make it hard for men, to be human,
yes, sir.
because they have an expectation that you're a man, so you shouldn't show emotions, you shouldn't say you hurt, you shouldn't, you should just be a man. And I'm going to take this opportunity here as the host of XY Spark to appeal to some of our men that if you're in a relationship like that, you need to go with this woman and go so you guys can get some counseling together to fix that, because that's not healthy. That's not a healthy relationship dynamic, guys. And I am appealing to you. And if you are a female and you're listening to XY Spark and you have a friend who is doing it or you're doing it, stop it. It is not helping our men to be the best version of themselves. And if they can do
Yeah.
it for you, you should be willing to do it for them. So I'm challenging every sex, whether male or female, to look at how you're doing it. Because here's someone speaking from experience. Frederick is saying that even when he provides that safe space, it's not being reciprocated. So he's left in the middle of nowhere, okay, and wondering what to
Yeah.
do. Is there something wrong with me? But we're saying healthy masculinity is recognizing if you're in a relationship like that. And if you really love the woman, go and get some counseling together so you can fix that relationship. Okay. And if there's a female listening to our podcast and you're doing it, stop it and seek to empower that guy and allow him to be human. Because if you didn't want to be in a relationship with a human, you should have called Microsoft and ordered a robot. But if he's a man, and I'm saying something strong here, but that's reality, guys. And by now you'd realize that, Rolando, I speak straight, and that's just how I do it. But we have to recognize that we're talking about the emotional, psychological well-being of your partner, and we've got to recognize that. So definitely, Frederick. That's important. I'm glad you said it, because a lot of the next thing I'm going to say here is this, Frederick, that there are a lot of men, and guys, I'm saying this to you, and ladies, I'm saying it to you if you're listening. If your relationship is going down that path, it needs some intervention. Do not ignore it. It's a red flag. Okay, Frederick.
It is.
Go
It is
ahead,
a red
buddy.
flag. It is a red flag. To and again to even further amplify the point, um, as I stated earlier, I've experienced domestic violence on both ends of this. I won't say domestic violence, but domestic abuse on both ends of the spectrum. I
Mm,
was the person that abused someone, and then in return, I was the person that was abused. So
mm,
when and that was another thing for me that I had, that when me and my counselor talked about it, it was something that when we touched, because it was something that I didn't want to talk about, because I thought I had buried it. But when we did talk about it, kind of find out that was the large reason for a lot of the things that I experienced, a lot of the emotional distresses that I experienced because of the guilt and the shame that I felt when I hurt this person.
mm,
Also tied in with the guilt and the shame of being arrested, you know, confessing to what I did, and you know and being taken away in handcuffs. That there's the embarrassment of that.
mhm, mhm,
And then
mhm,
and all and then also understand then also with the understanding that this is something that would follow you that would follow me for the remainder of my days.
mm,
And even to to experience that it was it was something that I had never experienced before,
mhm,
and it was something that really kind of ingrained a lot of negative thoughts about who I was in my mind, because thank God I only got maybe a couple of days of jail time, but they put me on probation for the remainder of the time. But
mm,
it put me in a very isolated state.
mhm,
I didn't want to. I was afraid to have interactions with females.
Hmm.
And if I did have interactions with females, I it was I restricted it to only sexual interactions because any other interaction would I felt was harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
we talked about the part my part of being the my part of being abused.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that surprised me,
Hmm.
and it scared the living daylights out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was afraid because I felt that if I had said something to someone,
Hmm.
that the person that I was in this relationship with, that was being abused, that was being verbally and then on that was being verbally, emotionally, mentally, and then at times physically abusive with me. If I would have said anything, I would they would have saw that, and they would have immediately took me away again. And I was afraid of, and I was that's what I was afraid. I was afraid of that, so I stayed and I
Hmm.
endured
Hmm.
until I found the courage to remove myself from it. But even when I talked to my counselor about it, she mentioned, she said these are emotions that you had repressed for so long because, and she told me that you put these emotions aside because you felt they had no bearing on a lot of things that you currently go through, but they do.
Hmm.
That, and and when she broke it down to me, she said this is the abusive situations that you occurred, that you went through, and then all the other situations that happened after that, culminating up to the loss of your child, loss of your son. You know, all these things are the culmination of what happened. This is the reason why you suffer from PTSD. This is the reason why you suffer from anxiety. You know, and it was it was an eye opener for me to understand that something from 1997 could have an incident or a couple of incidents in 1 year of 1997 could have an impact on me in the year 2020, in the year 2020, and up in 2021.
Hmm.
And it really kind of had forced, I won't say forced me, but it really got me to looking and exploring the deeper recesses of myself, to understand, you know, why am I wired the way that I'm wired?
Hmm.
And certain to kind of understand why certain things, why do I feel a certain way when it comes to certain things. Now, again, this is just to be extremely transparent with your listeners, and you especially, you know, with the death of my son by a police officer, and then the subsequent incidents that followed.
Hmm.
So now we're talking Alton Sterling. We're talking George Floyd, Atiana Jefferson, Drayshawn Reed, um, Breonna Taylor, and Rayshard Brooks. We're all these incidents that I would see or that I would hear about on TV. It it drove my anxiety levels to a million.
Hmm.
And every time I would see these images,
Mm-hmm.
and especially the images of George Floyd, it brought back all kinds of things that I had that I hadn't experienced in ages. And I was like, you know, anxiety levels at a million. Now I'm a lot now at this point now I'm just like, why is this going on and why is this happening? And it was a crazy time. Especially August of last year. It was an extremely crazy time
Mm-hmm.
because at that point this is when, this is in August. This is when I had separated from my spouse because there are marital problems, and there are marital problems beyond repair at this point. And I felt that I had to do, and at that point, probably even in August, that's when I made my second suicide attempt. God, God willing, it was unsuccessful. Thank God.
Hmm.
But it put me in a spot. It put me in a point to where something had to give.
Mm-hmm.
If and if I didn't do anything to help myself
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, mentally,
Mm-hmm.
I was I was gonna I was gonna I was I was gonna suffer. I was gonna suffer. I was already suffering physically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not from abuse or anything, not from physical abuse, but suffering physically because my health started declining.
Mm.
High blood pressure, more aches and pains than normal for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it in my mind to be like, I need to do something about this, because if I don't, it's literally going to take me out.
Mm. Wow,
And I was
Frederick, Frederick, man, listen, man. You know what, man? I'm glad that you were able to come to XY Spark tonight and share your story. And I'm hoping that all listeners can hear the genuineness and the passion and the willingness. I mean, so many things has happened in your life. You're a veteran from the Navy. You lost your son. You've been abused, and you have been the aggressor and you have been the receiver of abuse. Man, you have a phenomenal life experience, and still yet what you just said, Frederick, I'm hoping that our listeners capture that, hey, I had to do something to fix me. And that is
yeah,
so powerful. That is the art of healing and transformation and healthy masculinity. Taking ownership, recognizing what's going on, and making a positive step that, hey, I have fixed me. And Frederick, that is so powerful, man. And thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that.
anytime, man, anytime. It's when, like I said, when I think when when you're able to, as in, I'm saying this, I'm gonna say this generally, as not only for me, but for any male. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your color. It doesn't matter your creed. It doesn't matter your religious affiliation or anything of that nature. When you have to come into understanding of yourself when you go through these emotional, mental, and psychological moments or episodes. It's you have to be able to. At first, you won't recognize what's going on, because the experiences are new. They're they're nuanced, and you won't necessarily understand them initially.
Mm,
But then, as you continue to have these experiences, these emotional, these psychological, these mental experiences, you find out that they have a negative impact on your quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
Your relationships suffer. Your job performance suffers.
Hmm.
You you become more despondent than you were initially. You become, in my case, more reclusive.
Mm.
You know, or even you become more standoffish, and and you have to realize that certain aspects of your life are suffering. For me, it took the suicide, the second suicide attempt, to really just put things in perspective. For my brothers, whatever color you are, don't don't allow it to get to a suicide attempt for you to understand that there's some things going on inside you that need to be addressed, whether it's hurt and pain from a previous relationship, whether it's from being abused or neglected as a child, or maybe something even more recent, maybe the passing of a loved one, um, or a close loved one, maybe a brother, sister, or a father, or whomever.
Hmm.
Maybe it was a broken relationship,
Hmm.
but don't let it get to the point of no return before you, number one, understand that there's something wrong, and then number two, you seek help, and then three, you you get a grasp of what you're going through, and you set yourself on a path towards healing. Trust me, the path is going to be difficult, and there's going to be so many obstacles thrown in your way. There's going to be doubt, there's going to be fear, there's going to be negative statements tossed at you, but continue to walk the path, because your healing is that destination. And if you're willing to embrace the thorns and the storms and the negativity and the and everything that's going to come, everything that's going to be heaped up on your shoulders along the way, you you'll make it out nowhere. You'll make it out no worse for wear. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say that I'm at my destination just yet. I'm still traveling. I'm still traveling down that road towards healing. Is it an easy road to travel down? It is not. There are days that I have my days. You're gonna have your days. You know, I tell like I you know I'm actually right now I'm actually writing a book about, loosely based upon my own experiences, with the loss of my child. But so the thing that I realize is that, they're gonna be rainy days. The trick is for those rainy days to be less frequent.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you can get to that point to where those rainy days are less frequent, I'm not gonna say that it's gonna be all peaches and cream, because let's be real here. It won't be. You're gonna have people that's gonna say that's not possible for you to do, because you were hardwired a certain way. You were already hardwired a certain way from your upbringing, or you were already taught as a young man or as a child, and then from a young man, that you're not supposed to say what you feel, or have these feelings and things of that nature. It's first and foremost, it's okay. It's all right to feel you. It's all right to feel sad. It's all right to feel happy. It's okay to feel worried. We and I'm pretty. You may agree with me on this one, Rolando.
Yes.
We as human beings, we experience all the positive feelings such as joy, happiness, elation, um, celebration, but we we compartmentalize all the negative feelings such as sadness, despair, despondency,
Mm.
worry,
Mm-hmm.
fear, and those are just as natural as the ones I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to we don't. The thing of it is, we don't embrace those feelings and take those feelings head on, just like we do the other ones, and that's
Mm-hmm.
important. That's
Mm-hmm.
important.
Wow. Man, Frederick, listen, man, I could, man, I could keep you here for the rest of the evening, man. I can see that my listeners, they're loving everything that you're saying. And guys, let me tell you, man, I don't want to keep Frederick here all night. The guy is probably missing out on his beauty sleep now. But Frederick, man, listen, man, I really, really, man, your story has been an inspiration, man. Listen, Frederick, you wrote two books. I want you to and tell us what's next. But we can't let you go before we get the folks to know a little bit more about that part.
Okay, so the two books that I've written, um, the two books that I've personally written, one of them is called Broken Chains. The This book speaks to domestic violence and domestic abuse. The stories are all it's four different stories. They're all interconnected. One of the stories is loosely based upon my own experience, and it speaks to a lot of things. It speaks to what's known and what's not known. It speaks to what's hidden and what's revealed. It also speaks to what is felt and what is not felt, and what is not felt. But it also speaks to the perseverance, the courage, the emotional and mental fortitude for these four characters to come forth and speak about their stories, and to speak of how they remove themselves from the situation. But it also speaks to how they still struggle with it, how they still struggle with the situation as it pertains to their daily
Mm,
lives. You know, one character is a male who's a successful businessman. His wife is mentally and physically abusive. Another character is a wife whose husband is, who's physically abusive.
mm-hmm,
Um, Another one speaks to a child, a 17-year-old child who's about to graduate from high school, who whose whose mom neglects him, but his uncle is physically abusive. And the last one, which was the most difficult story for me to write,
mm-hmm,
is about a young lady who let's see. And every time I talk about this young lady, this story, it I always get I always get a bit emotional because again, it was the most difficult story for me to write.
mm-hmm,
So we're talking about a young lady who had been bounced around in foster care. Finally, found a foster parents who would love her and care for her, only to find out that her foster father was sexually abusing her,
mm,
and she got pregnant and had a baby by the foster father, only to have the foster mother kill it, and some other things that happened. So as a result of that, as a result of the sexual abuse and the murder of a child, she ends up abusing herself.
mm-hmm,
Going out prostituting herself and things of that nature. So abuse comes in many forms. It's not just the physical and verbal abuse; it's also abuse of self
mm-hmm,
through traumatic
mm-hmm,
situations.
mm-hmm,
But it speaks to how these people experience these things and how they overcome. But yet also it reveals how very human these four characters are.
mm-hmm,
And the second book that I wrote is the second book within the series. So the series is called the Healed series. So the second book is called The Road Less Traveled.
mm-hmm,
Now, instead of it being four interconnected stories, the two stories I only focus on two of the main characters in the book. So one of the main characters is the younger one. He's he's been successful doing what he's doing, but the recent losses of his mother and father within the same year have taken a toll on him emotionally and mentally, to where he he's considered suicide and all these other things. The second story focuses on the second story part of the story focuses on the young lady that I mentioned earlier. Now she's a lot more settled. She's a lot more settled. She's more a much more confident person. Um, she's pregnant with her husband's child Um, Her husband is a special forces operator who is sent in on a mission, but she gets the sad news that he perishes. So now you deal with the concept of loss and how people deal with that, but also I kind of dive a little bit deeper into the look to that to how sometimes how sometimes an uncaring parent only wants what they want, and they don't, and they have no regard for what and how you feel,
Mm.
especially when it comes to losing someone that was your heart and your soul, and the person that was the reason that you smile every day. So I I deal with the mental health aspect of it as far as the depression and the suicide, but I also talk about how people deal with loss.
Mm.
We all deal with that in a different way. But I also try to speak to the positive sides of recovery from depression and suicide and anything else any other mental ailments, but also speak about the recovery towards from losing someone, and how the how the grief process can be helpful if if you allow it to take its course.
Mm. Mm. Wow, Frederick, man, listen, we appreciate you, buddy. We appreciate you, and we want to officially send you the XY Spark welcoming badge. You are officially a part of the XY Spark family. I mean, want you to know, Frederick, that your story has really spoken to me personally this evening. It has said a lot to me about being open, being vulnerable, being honest, being aggressive in pursuing the path for healing, which is something that I want to encourage more men to do. Don't stop pursuing that path. And Frederick emphasized that tonight. Don't stop pursuing that path, because the goal is the rainy days may not end, but you want them to be less frequent. And so, Frederick, man, I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of our discussion this evening. I'm wondering if any one of our listeners, do you have any questions at this time, or any comment that you want to say? Even though just send a thumbs up or whatever to Frederick. But the talk is now open for you to do that. And as you are putting a comment or sending a shout out to Frederick here, or sending a high five, a brotherly hug, whatever that is. I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. XY Spark continues, because believe it or not, Frederick, tomorrow afternoon at 2 we're going to be having Janelle Green, a relationship coach, who's going to be coming on XY Spark Live tomorrow to talk with us again. So
Oh
put it on
man.
your calendar. Don't miss it.
Oh man.
But in the meantime, Frederick, you know what, man? I don't think we could have had a better person to come and close off Black History Month. All the things that you said this evening are so important for us to know, that mental health is not a myth. Mental health is real. We should not
Hmm.
compartmentalize emotions. We should not be fearful to seek help. We should not try to hide away from the fact that outside of being men, where it's okay for us to be human. And if we're in a relationship where it's going down that path that Frederick spoke about, where it's emotionally, physically, verbally abusive, I say go connect with somebody and get some relationship counseling and deal with that, because you deserve to be a healthy male, and your partner deserves to be in a relationship with a healthy male. And so that's what healthy masculinity is all about. Frederick, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We appreciate you. And to you, our listeners, thank you guys for giving us the time. The show wouldn't be the same without you. Thank you so much. Remember to continue to like and follow and share and subscribe to XY Spark and be more than welcome to become a patron as we continue to promote healthy masculinity. Frederick, brother, peace to you. Thank you for being here with us. And man, you keep safe and let's keep the connection going, eh?
Most definitely, man. Peace and blessings to you as
Okay,
well.
man. Take care, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Please join Rolando next time on XY Spark as he engages us in practical discussions that promotes healthy masculinity and challenge men to live extraordinary lives. At XY Spark, we believe the key for happier families is restoring healthy masculinity.